Hi, I'm Randy Horton. We're here at the Boston Convention Center for the LSX World Congress. You can't make it to every conference. And even if you can, you can't talk to every person who's interesting at every conference. So we're here trying to close that gap and bring some of the best of this convention to people who are watching this video. We are here with Sarah Small from Otsuka Precision Health. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us about Otsuka Precision Health and then tell us about you and how you landed here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for Otsuka Precision Health, which is a subsidiary of Otsuka. We are a life sciences company focusing on developing the health experience for people to bring total health care to individuals.
That's very cool. What does that mean?
Yeah, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think I can speak on my behalf. And, what I think about as the health experience is treating people where they are in their journey. We all, at some point in our lives, may face sickness and want to strive for wellness. And so how do we bring together the sickness and the wellness together to both slow down the progression of sickness, but also to live more total, healthier, full lives?
Very interesting. And tell us about you and how you landed in this role.
Yeah, thank you. So my background's in clinical psychology and human development. That's my education. And I started in the biotech pharma world about a decade ago. Before then, I worked in clinical research. And I started my career at Biogen, working in digital and quantitative medicine, thinking about what's meaningful to patients, how do you measure it, and then using digital tools and technologies to put them into the clinical trials to actually measure what's meaningful to patients. After then, I worked at Moderna, doing something similar, working in digital health, thinking in rare disease and oncology. And then most recently, about a year ago, I joined Otsuka Precision Health in my role of health experience and applied evidence, supporting a multitude of products for OPH.
So it's a relevant thing you're working on these days, just to ground it.
Yeah, it's great. So I lead our applied evidence for Rejoyn, which is a prescription digital therapeutic for major depressive disorder. It's adjunctive therapy for 22 years and older, currently on label. And I help to generate the real-world evidence to show outcomes and healthcare resource utilization data so that we can better our access adoption in the real world.
Could you maybe describe a little bit for people who aren't as familiar? What is a digital therapeutic? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a digital therapeutic is not a pill. It is software as a medical device or cleared by the FDA as a 510K. Additionally, software as a medical device is something that you do on your tablet. So you're actually taking your therapeutic in by using the software on your phone. I can talk a little bit more about the modality if you're interested in Rejoyn.
Oh yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting topic. So.
Yeah, Rejoyn is a prescription digital therapeutic, like I mentioned, that's FDA-cleared. It went through rigorous clinical trials and it's on your smartphone. It's a combination of two things. The first is CBT exercises, as well as emotional face memory tasks, which is a lesson-based or exercise-based task that you do on your phone. And the way that it works is that you see a photo of an emotional face, both positive and negative, and everything in between, and you have to remember it and go back to it. And so that exercise between the CBT and the EFMT, it's actually the combination of both that changes your brain. And it actually treats the depression symptoms. It's not just like an SSRI or SNRI that actually masks the depression symptoms. This is actually changing your brain. And that's why it's like exercise for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because it changes the wiring between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. And that strengthens the connection, which helps with your depression symptoms. You'll see a reduction.
So this is something that's really not possible with a drug today. It's a whole different approach to wiring the brain or stimulating the brain.
Yes, yeah, it's really doing that. It's a new modality for depression. And I think for a lot of clinicians, it's new. It's not something necessarily they may have education on is what's a PDT and how does it differ. We are adjunctive therapy. The expectation is that patients are on a antidepressant or a depression symptom medication before starting the treatment of Rejoyn.
So I'm going to guess that one of your challenges that's probably unique in pharma is that in pharma, you have certain things you want to measure, right? Endpoints and other things, but you're physically constrained by what are you measuring on the body. With digital and cognitive things, you probably measure just about anything.
Yeah, it's interesting. And our pharmaceutical company, OPDC, within Otsuka, is the one that brought the Mirai trial to life. And so there's a rigorous clinical trial data behind the product. I think that's what excites people the most is that there was a rigorous clinical trial that involved Rejoyn, the interventional arm, plus a placebo group, a sham arm, and you can really see the difference. You can see that through our data, and that's what the totality of evidence is what granted Rejoyn the approval from FDA. I think in the real world, you can see even more. I think we're currently adopting Rejoyn over the last year. It's been commercialized, and we're starting to see kind of proof points and signals of what does this really look like for people suffering from depression, and how is it helping them live their lives more fully today?
Got it. Very interesting. So talk a little bit about how you are successful doing digital and device in a pharmaceutical world.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we talk a lot about pharma, but software as a medical device is actually its own category, and it's not the same FDA pathway as pharma.
Yes.
So I would see it as completely separate,
Mhm.
and that's why Otsuka Precision Health is a life sciences company. We're in our own playing field between, of course, our other companies within Otsuka. And I think it's complementary. It's another tool in the toolbox that clinicians can use for patients for their depression. And so we see it as a complementary treatment alongside pharmaceutical options.
Got it. Got it. What do you think is an industry we've learned a lot about in the last decade, and where do you think we still have a lot more learning to go to make these kinds of things successful?
Yeah, I mean, PDTs are fairly new. We've seen a lot of companies, unfortunately, go out of business because they run out of capital. And so I think what we've learned is that adoption and access are huge, and being able to drive that adoption and access is ultimately who's going to pay for it. And our call to action is really to make sure that providers see the benefit that patients will receive, that patients see the benefit that they would receive in taking it, but then also that we can demonstrate evidence in how it's helping costs from a payer and reimbursement standpoint, that this is a treatment that's worth paying for from a payer and reimbursement standpoint.
Do you think that'll become an easier task in terms of patient and provider as people become more familiar with this as a concept?
I think they're two different problems. I think providers and clinicians need education about PDTs and also about new modalities like Rejoyn.
Mhm.
But then also payers need to understand that this is different than a therapeutic product. I think typically in a medication, there is a clear pathway for how you get reimbursed from it. And because there is no clear pathway for PDTs to get reimbursed, and it's often kind of wishy-washy, that we kind of get kicked down the road to be able to actually get reimbursement, which makes clinicians feel like it's more difficult to prescribe it because patients have to pay out of pocket up front.
Right. Actually, I'm wondering if the shortest bridge from the old world to the new world is actually for the patient who's just, it's an app that helps me.
Yeah, I hope, where our hope is that prescribers prescribe it, because that's the barrier to adoption, is if a prescriber isn't willing to prescribe it to their patient or talk about it and educate it with their patient or offer it as a new tool in their toolkit to their patients, then patients will never receive it. And we know that patients are constrained financially. And so if they're not getting reimbursement or payment for it by insurance companies or payers, then the access becomes limited. And so how do we drive adoption and access at the same time to both get provider and patient buy-in while having somebody who's able to pay for it?
So do you have to think about issues with patients that to some extent your competition for adherence is not another drug, it's Fruit Ninja or
Yeah, it's funny you say that because
some digital game?
yeah, it's interesting you say that because payers have asked us that question of, is your engagement the same as Netflix? And I would say that taking a pill is probably not as fun as watching your favorite Netflix show. And taking a therapeutic for your depression is probably not as fun as watching a Netflix show. But engagement and utilization is important. And I think how you measure it is even more important. So I think it's not how much you utilize something, it's the clinical benefit that you gain. And so as long as you're seeing clinical benefit, I don't think it necessarily matters the definition of utilization or adherence. We should follow the data. If the data is showing us that a patient is utilizing a PDT X percentage and that leads to a positive clinical outcome, why does that matter? If it's less, your percentage is less than mine of utilization, but we're both seeing the same benefit clinically, why does that matter?
Sure. As long as you get there.
As long as you get there and you're getting clinical benefit from it, how does utilization matter? I think the difference between PDTs and a typical medication is that you can measure it. We don't know how many times a patient is taking a pill, but you can measure and see how many times a patient opens an app.
So you can use the same tools as Netflix to see how long do people, where do they pause in the show and those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Same types of metrics. You can see how long they're using the app, where they're using the app as far as clicking on the different buttons, understanding the exercises, how long they're doing them, how often they're doing them, when are they not doing them, the times a day, all those types of things we're able to measure should a patient consent.
Got it. So sounds like your job's a real blend of qualitative and quantitative.
Absolutely. I think embedding the patient voice into everything that we do is very important to be able to continue to better the experience of individuals who are using Rejoyn. I think that's the most important thing, is that patients feel that they're getting benefit, and clinically we're able to measure that they are getting benefit.
Very good. Any advice for somebody who's more of a traditional medical device person is interested in moving into this space?
Yeah, I think as somebody who worked in R&D in digital health for a decade before moving into the commercial space working on PDTs, I would say that it needs to go past the science. We need to think about, how do you actually implement this product into the real world? Traditionally in digital health, it's more cookie cutter and there's more of a playbook. But in PDTs, it's really hard and there's no playbook to follow. So you have to be creative. You have to keep the patients at the center and you have to think about your customer.
All right. Very interesting. It's interesting. almost more of an engineering problem than a science problem. That's how do you implement it?
Yeah, I think
know?
it's a mix of both. And clinical workflows in practice is how patients would get adoption to this. So understanding how you embed a PDT into a clinical workflow and how a practitioner sees it as an option for a patient is just as important as educating the practitioner on the actual product itself.
Very good. Well, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate
thanks so
it.
much.
You speaking at the conference?
Yes, I'm speaking today at the conference on a panel.
What's the topic?
The topic is on bringing R&D to commercialization and thinking about the value.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. So thanks.
Yes.
Have a great session.
Thanks so much.